As an avid manhwa reader that has not read more than, I think, 5 or 6 manhwas in his lifetime, no, actually more than that, like a dozen, but not nearly enough as manga. When I first came across Solo Leveling, I never thought, oh, no level up, blah 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 blah. I never thought it would be such a big deal because, hey, it seemed like the most generic power fantasy, and it actually kind of is, except to some plot points, but also it isn't, so you get what I say if you have read the source. But anyway, the anime came out the first episode. I made a reaction on my Farsi channel, actually over at Kik, and just made a video on it and stuff. I just wanted to emphasize on the fact that I do recommend you guys to actually watch Solo Leveling. I do know that it's not nowhere near the levels that you expect watching Attack on Titan and other Shingeki no Kyojin, other anime, but hey, give it some time. It's a fun thing to watch, and hey, we have Sawano, they're working on it. And for the first episode, it was actually pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, I did think it would flop at least, because first we had A1, and I'm gonna talk about A1. And secondly, it did seem to me that it wouldn't be much of a big deal when it came out, and I was wrong. So, what is Solo Leveling? It's about the dude you see on the screen, that he is the weakest of them all, and he actually becomes the greatest of them all. It seems a very, very simple plot. It does have a few twists here and there, and it does have beautiful waifus and husbandus for you to watch, to read, or whatever. But what actually makes this a pretty good read and good watch probably so far, I want to talk about the anime, is the fact that this anime does what it has sets out to do pretty well, and that's being a power fantasy. You should not expect Naoki Urasawa's monster level of plot twists, character development and stuff like that. It's not Gingayo Densetsu either, it's not Attack on Titan, it's not Shingeki no Kyojin. But hey, it's a pretty great power fantasy, and it's a pretty beautiful and feel-good anime. And it does get brutal, and it is brutal from the very beginning if you do like brutal manga and brutal works. What you should have into account is we have someone working on the sound section or the music section of the anime. I think Mamoto was there too. A1 Pictures is doing great and is doing wonders on the anime. I never expected to see what I saw and watch what I watched last night when I was watching the first episode of Solo Leveling. The funniest thing is, it does seem like A1 Pictures had Solo Leveling in the mind, and it was the top priority compared to Nier Automata, a beautiful video game by Yoko Taro. Its predecessors being Nier Replicant, they remade that, and Drakengard that ties into Nier Automata and Nier. But a pretty great game that had severe issues when it was animated by A1, and I can kind of see what was happening behind the closed doors of A1 Studios. They were probably working on Solo Leveling, and that was the main plate, let's say. Like how Mappa loves Jujutsu and Attack on Titan was in like backlog or something. But content-wise, apart from the animation-wise, they did some interesting stuff that actually pushed me to make this video. They changed a few things, added a few things. They introduced our beautiful waifu very, very early on. We didn't have her here. She was actually appearing in the manhwa much later on, and she is here actually right now, and it was a great introduction, and they had that ass shot, that butt shot, was amazing. It wasn't necessary, it wasn't what we came for, but it was actually what made us stay for the next weeks and the months to come. But jokes aside, they actually did something very interesting too, that they even introduced a few other characters that you wouldn't see much further in the story, and we have them here. And that's because they wanted to make a pretty engaging first episode to hook you to the anime, so you watch weekly, every single week. And we also had the very beginning, the opening sequences, that this is the main part I want to talk about. We had the ants in a very, let's say, flashbacky thingy that we saw, and then we saw the dude 3 years later. There's a reason they did that. First of all, it's a Jeju Island arc. It appears much later in the story. I read the manhwa about 3 years ago, and that arc is pretty similar to the Chimera ants or Chimera ants from Hunter x Hunter or Hunter x Hunter. Or Hunter x Hunter, people actually do kind of say that, but that's plain wrong. Just watch how Togashi Sensei pronounces his own word.
どうも皆さん、こんにちは。ハンターハンターを書いている富樫義弘です。ハンターハンターを書いている富樫義弘です。
It's pretty similar to that, and that's a pretty good. That's one of the best arcs in the anime and in the manhwa, let's say. And I do think that they are going to go through onto that part, animating Solo Leveling. That is actually pretty possible, and I do think that it was probably a pretty smart move to tease this arc so soon in the story, in the anime. So we do have an idea of what we are going to get into, because we do not get to see what happens next on Jeju Island. You can go search and see, but I do recommend you wait for it and enjoy what you see, because it's one of the most impactful parts of the manhwa on Japan in this storyline, and you will see why. And a few interesting things happen. There is a power balance shifter that happens due to the circumstances and due to the accident, let's say the events that happen in Jeju Island. Just give it some time. What was pretty interesting to me to see in the anime was how brutal they would showcase the brutality of the manhwa, and they didn't disappoint. And I do think that, considering the limitations many of the manhwa and manga have, and many of the anime have when they get on the biggest screen, or not the biggest screen, but on the medium-sized screen, but biggest screen is actually movies and theaters. They actually have to censor a lot of stuff, but it was actually pretty brutal for a first episode, and I do think that they kind of were inspired by Attack on Titan, the first episode that ended with Mom with Carla being eaten, and they decided to have the major thing and the brutal that's happening at the very end. It's nowhere near the same impact, but hey, you have the weak guy now being in prison, let's say, in a place that he cannot escape with 13 other people that are actually, it's 13 people. You do know 13 points to? Yeah, AOE is actually confirmed, my bros. But anyway, they did kind of try to make a impactful first episode, and I do think it was pretty successful. What I do actually fear going forward is if the changes in the pacing that they did, not the pacing, but the order of events, kind of is signaling they are going to do a limited anime out of Solo Leveling. Considering how much hype the series have, I do think it's kind of improbability, let's say, and impossibilities for them to kind of make a one season thing out of Solo Leveling and drop it. But we have to be on the lookout. It can happen, and I do hope that this is not actually the case. Because hey, it's a good thing that they changed a few things, it's a good thing that they introduced a few characters much sooner in the story, and it helps to understand the world building and everything, but it kind of is problematic if they are going to do that a lot. Because hey, you do need to know how the world in Solo Leveling works, but if it's actually changing it too much to give you too much information compared to how it should be given to you based on the source of the anime that you have here, it should be handled pretty carefully. So thank you very much for watching. I might make other videos on it depending on the next episodes and shit, and I do know the things with AOE are kind of left in the air, but do accept my apology. I've been a bit busy, and I just want to have my thesis done, my master's thesis, so I can actually make videos in peace. And yeah, have a great day, and as we say in Farsi, شبتون بخیر روزتون بخیر.